my name is Elisa Grishman. I use she, her pronouns. I am a fat white woman with brown curly hair sitting in a power wheelchair, and I am wearing a t-shirt that says, if you, what is it? What does my shirt say?
If you embrace diversity,
If you embrace diversity but ignore disability, you're doing it wrong. Eugenics, noun. From the Oxford English Dictionary, the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics which is regarded as desirable. Eugenics was increasingly discredited as unscientific and racially biased during the 20th century, especially after the adoption of its doctrines by the Nazis in order to justify their treatment of Jews, disabled people, and other minority groups. Before I start, did you know that Pennsylvania is one of 31 states where in 2025, the forced sterilization of disabled people is still legal? When I woke up on November 6th and learned that Trump had won the election, I cried a lot. And I very, very honestly told my friends and family that I was scared because based on what I'd seen so far from Trump's rhetoric and from the contents of Project 2025, I knew in my heart that I would not live to see the next 4 years play out. I knew that I was going to die under Trump's callous thumb, and more importantly, so would a huge percentage of disabled Americans. So why should anyone give a shit about people with disabilities? Let me first ask, who here wears glasses or contact lenses? Congratulations, y'all are disabled. Disability is the largest minority group in the world and the only group that anyone can join at any point in their life, regardless of race, ethnicity, age, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, or socioeconomic status. Over 1 in 4 people in the US live with some sort of disability, and I'll bet you all the money I'm worth, which admittedly is not a lot, that the number is a huge underestimate because of how many people fear the stigma of being disabled and choose not to identify as such on census forms. One hot button topic in the news right now is DEIA. DEIA, you might ask? What's that A for? The full acronym is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility. Funny how accessibility keeps getting cut off even before January 20th. With a single executive order, Vice President Donald Trump called for the termination of all DEIA programs in the government. Terrified companies such as Target, Amazon, Meta, Walmart, and others immediately fell into line with the new regime, and more have followed. When I say that this will be catastrophic for the disability community, I make no exaggeration. As of 2023, only 22.5% of disabled people were employed, compared to 65.8% of the general population. This is actually the highest employment rate of disabled people since the Bureau of Labor Statistics started collecting comparable data in 2008. DEIA policies were a large driver of disabled people being employed, as they ensured accommodations were in place beyond the bare minimum requirements set forth in the Americans with Disabilities Act. Companies that have followed DEIA best practices for employee hiring and retention led to provisions such as equal pay for disabled and non-disabled employees, allowing employees to work from home, and even things as simple as providing seats for cashiers who can't stand for a full 8-hour shift. Since the Trump administration seems to be focused on waste and spending and the cost of DEIA, the Job Accommodation Network found that 59% of workplace accommodations cost nothing, and the median one-time cost was as little as $500. Not a huge amount to keep someone gainfully employed instead of relying on government subsidies. page turn, sorry.
Alright. Keep going. Take your time. Yes, ma'am.
I shouldn't have to explain this, but disabled lives have value. My life is worth living. My freedom is worth having. Fuck, I've been arrested 7 times now fighting for the rights of disabled people because every single person on the planet has the potential to join our ranks at any time, and I believe that when that happens, they deserve to enjoy the same rights and privileges as before. And speaking of privilege, I want to acknowledge that my privilege here as a white cisgendered person, anything I say that applies to myself is magnified many times over for BIPOC and LGBT folks, emphasis on the T. When Trump called for an end to for DEIA, it was what I worry history will remember as the beginning of the end for people with disabilities. In the has it only been a month? In the single fucking month that is since Trump has taken office, it feels like everything has gone to shit. According to the American Association of People with Disabilities, there are currently agencies within the federal government that are beginning to review disabled employees' reasonable accommodations. This is critical because the federal government is the largest employer of people with disabilities in the country. Review of the accommodations will likely lead to mass layoffs as those accommodations are removed, creating even more economic instability beyond the existing layoffs that are already happening. It's going beyond DEIA too. Texas versus Becerra is a lawsuit backed by 17 states that's currently going through the courts, which aims to eliminate Section 504. Has anyone here seen Crip Camp? Great. If you've seen Crip Camp, you already know what Section 504 is. If not, A, you're missing out. Go watch it now. It's on Netflix. It's great. B, briefly summarizing, it is the precursor to the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it forbids discrimination against disabled people for any company, corporation, anything that's receiving federal funding. Special education and individualized education plans, 504. Reasonable accommodations at work, 504. Hospitals having wheelchair accessible equipment, 504. Sign language interpreters at medical appointments, 504. The list is long, and if the case gets through the courts and Section 504 is overturned, it's all gone. Perhaps the most important Supreme Court case to affect people with disabilities is Olmstead versus LC, the outcome of which is called the Olmstead Rule. That ruling says, to quote the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, that segregation and unnecessary institutionalization of people with disabilities is discriminatory and illegal, and that people with disabilities have the right, like everyone else, to receive health care and other services in their homes and communities. The Attorneys General of the 17 states currently seeking to declare 504 as being unconstitutional have made it clear that the Olmstead Rule is in their sights as well. Added to that are the recent attacks on Medicaid. Don't even start me on that, because I could talk for hours about how delicately disabled lives hang in the balance based on our access to not just health care provided by Medicaid, but also to in-home services and durable medical equipment such as wheelchairs and respirators. With no DEIA, with no Section 504, with no Olmstead Rule, with no Medicaid, hospitals can deny disabled people service. Schools can deny disabled people an education. Government buildings can deny disabled people entry. Workplaces can refuse to hire disabled people or provide them reasonable accommodation. People with disabilities will be unable to afford to stay in their homes or pay for their medications. We will be forced to live in institutions packed in like sardines, where we will die in pools of our own waste because there won't be any services provided to take us to the bathroom. Genocide. Now.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. I know some of you know this already, but you're going to practice a little bit. The response to this is, we support our neighbors when they are down.